Hello everybody, Imagine Old People here, and welcome back to Encounter of the Week. I'm so excited to bring you another addition to this series, and this week I am doing something in honor of one of my current favorite animes of all time, and bringing you the character from that anime that I think has the coolest powers in my opinion. He is a fan favorite. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the golden child of Jujutsu Kaisen, Gojo Satoru. First things first, Gojo Satoru is of course a medium humanoid, as he is an average sized humanoid within the show, and of course he is also chaotic neutral, as Gojo rarely follows what he is told to do, and if he does do so, he does it very begrudgingly. Therefore, Gojo is more than willing to just kill the higher-ups of Jujutsu Society just because he wants to, and because of that, I don't really see him as any form of lawful, and that's why I put him at chaotic neutral. Next up, I gave him an armor class of 20, which is just based off of him having a 30 dexterity plus the 10 base armor class. I gave him 475 hit points, or a rolled total of 25d20 plus 200, a speed of 75 feet, as that is the maximum speed that a wood elf monk with the mobile feat could achieve, and I just thought it makes sense for him to be that fast. I also gave him a fly speed of 30 feet, as we do see him fly at certain points without the series, but I definitely think he is faster while running and jumping around than he is while flying. Next, we move into Gojo's statistics. I gave him a 24 in strength, as I believe that Gojo is of course superhuman level in terms of his strength. I gave him a 30 in dexterity, as his agility and ability to perform martial arts techniques incredibly well makes sense and collide with that dexterity being a 30. A 26 constitution, as he is able to take many hits before going down. A intelligence of 24, as he is more than likely smarter than the average human in a way bigger kind of way. I gave him a 26 wisdom, as, for monk shenanigans, number 1, and number 2, that perception from the 6 eyes definitely helps buff that wisdom. And finally, of course, we all know that Gojo is, of course, in fact, a very charismatic person, and so I gave him a 24. Gojo's stats are made to be more well-rounded as a boss. He's not supposed to have any distinct weaknesses, as the real Gojo didn't have really any distinct weaknesses. Next, we move on to the saving throws. I gave him proficiency in all of his saving throws. As I said before, Gojo is meant to be a well-rounded and incredibly difficult boss fight, as he is the strongest in his verse, which with the proficiency comes out to be a strength of plus 15, dexterity of plus 18, constitution of plus 16, intelligence of plus 15, wisdom of plus 16, and charisma of plus 15. Once again, these are the saving throws. Moving on to skills, I gave him proficiency in acrobatics for a plus 18, proficiency in athletics for a plus 15, expertise in perception because of the 6 eyes for a perception of 24, or plus 24, a performance of 15, and a persuasion of 15 because Gojo is quite flamboyant and also very persuasive. I gave him no damage resistances or immunities, nor did I give him any vulnerabilities, as Gojo seems to not have a typical resistance against certain damage, immunity to certain damage, or vulnerability to any given damage, so I just don't think it would make much sense for me to give him any of those. I did, however, give him a good amount of condition immunities, such as blinded, charmed, frightened, deafened, exhausted, frightened, incapacitated, petrified, poisoned, stunned, and unconscious, meaning that you're not really going to be hitting Gojo with a lot of status effects. Then again, that's if you can hit him anyways. More about that later. I gave him true sight of 120 feet and a passive perception of 32, which just coincides with his expertise in perception. For languages, I gave him common, of course, but I also gave him abyssal, celestial, infernal, depending on how you want to run cursed spirits, as I feel like Gojo definitely would be able to talk to cursed spirits if they were able to communicate. I gave him a challenge rating of 25. I don't think he crosses the threshold of some of the greater great worms or things like that, but I definitely still think that he is an incredibly difficult boss fight, and because of that challenge rating, he gets a proficiency bonus of +8. Next, we move on to Gojo's abilities, and of course the first things first that we get out of the way is of course the legendary resistances, which state that 3 times per day, Gojo can succeed a saving throw instead of failing. Then we move on to Gojo's actual techniques that he uses in the show for some of his abilities. Of course, we have Reverse Curse Technique, where Gojo can use his innate abilities to heal himself during combat. At the beginning of each of his turn, Gojo regains 25% of his maximum HP, and all of his missing body parts regenerate. That will come up later. Infinity. Gojo has a natural space of infinity around him. Anytime an attack is directed at Gojo, the DM rolls a d100, and on a 75 or lower, the attack does not reach Gojo. I didn't really have a way to incorporate infinity the way it actually works into the show, so this was just the next best thing. The 6 Eyes. Gojo's eyes are known as the mysterious 6 Eyes. As long as they are not destroyed, Gojo is immune to being surprised, and he can make a reaction each turn. Also, every instance of damage Gojo deals is doubled while the 6 Eyes are intact. Destroying only one of the eyes does not shut off their effects. Both must be destroyed. They can only be destroyed by a direct instance of damage aimed at them that deals 50 or more damage. This is per eye. Basically, this means that if you hit him with a fireball and it did 50 damage, you could not destroy one of the eyes, but if you hit him with a, let's say, Divine Smite right to his eye, and you did 50 or more damage, you would be able to destroy it. And finally, he has Cursed Energy Layering, where Gojo's unarmed strikes count as magical for the purpose of getting over resistances and immunity to non-magical damage. That's just a typical monk feature, but it does help if one of your party members just happens to be a lycanthrope. Moving on to Gojo's actions, I gave him a multi-attack, which consists of Gojo making 4 unarmed strike attacks, 1 primary blue attack, and 1 reversal red attack, as Gojo is a relentless fighter, especially when it comes to those he wants to kill. His unarmed strike is a melee weapon attack that has a plus 21 to hit, with a reach of 5 feet and single target. It does 22 or 2d10 plus 10 force damage, and each time a creature is hit by an unarmed strike by Gojo, they must make a DC 24 Constitution saving throw or be stunned until the end of their next turn as they reel from the impact. And yes, I know what that means. That means Gojo has infinite stunning strikes. I know. He's supposed to be annoying, strong, and a complete and utter roadblock. That's the point. His primary blue attack is an attack where Gojo launches an orb of blue energy up to 150 feet away that explodes in a 20-foot radius. All creatures in the radius must make a DC 24 dexterity saving throw, taking 40 or 10d6 radiant damage, and are blinded on a failed save, or half as much damage and are not blinded on a successful save. Finally, Reversal Red is a ranged spell attack with a plus 16 to hit, a range of 120 feet, and single target. It does 40 or 8d6 plus 8 radiant damage on a hit, and this attack roll is always made at advantage. So what that means is that Reversal Red will always have advantage when you're going to hit it. So basically, you always have advantage, or rather, Gojo always has advantage on his Reversal Red roll unless someone gives him disadvantage. Finally, the last action Gojo can take outside of his multi-attack is Hollow Purple, where Gojo launches a burst of extreme energy up to 150 feet away from him that explodes in a 60-foot radius, and in the radius, all creatures must make a DC 24 dexterity saving throw, taking 96 or 24d6 radiant damage and be blinded, or half as much damage on a successful save and not be blinded. And yes, you may see that there is no time limit on this blindness. That is the point. If you get hit by primary blue or hollow purple and you fail the save, you are simply blinded until someone casts lesser restoration or greater restoration on you. Moving on to Gojo's bonus actions, we have obviously the dash action, as I just think it would be really cool if Gojo could dash, making himself faster as a bonus action, which would take his speed up to a whopping 150 feet in a single turn, without ever using his action. And finally, amplification, where Gojo gives himself resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage until the beginning of his next turn. Moving on to Gojo's reactions, I gave him a reaction known as Heightened Senses, which says when Gojo would be hit by an attack, Gojo can force the creature to reroll their attack and use the new result. Remember, this is if they happen to get through infinity, he can still basically say, oh, you hit me through infinity? Well, maybe you don't. And finally, his second reaction is called Counterattack, where Gojo makes 2 unarmed strikes strike attacks against a creature that hit him with a melee weapon attack. Finally, we move on to Gojo's legendary actions. Gojo can take 3 legendary actions, choosing from the options I'm going to list. Only 1 legendary action option can be used at a time and only at the end of another creature's turn, and Gojo regains spent legendary actions at the start of his turn. He has a strike legendary action where Gojo makes an unarmed strike against a creature within range. He has a red legendary action where Gojo makes a reversal red attack against a creature within range. And he has a legendary action known as Focused Reversed Curse Technique, which costs 3 actions and can only be used once per day, which basically if Gojo does this, he heals himself for 100% of his maximum HP. Next, we get into the part that is known as the encounter section, where I give you 3 encounters that you could theoretically run Gojo under, and much like last week with Melania, Gojo is kind of the same way. He's just so unbearably strong that if he's not a final boss, then he might just be a roadblock for your players that they're not supposed to get somewhere yet. Maybe your players are going somewhere in your campaign that you don't necessarily want them to go to, and as a warning, you do a little Oda foreshadowing when he put Mihawk in the East Blue, and you put this guy in front of your players, and he kicks their absolute teeth in, and then, you just get to say, well, if you don't want that to happen, maybe go a different direction, and you can kind of guide your players in a different direction. The second encounter idea I had was to simply make him the strongest. Maybe you're playing a Jujutsu Kaisen campaign, or you're just playing a campaign with a lot of incredibly powerful magic users. Gojo would fit right in. Not only would he be incredibly powerful with magic, as he is, but on top of that, he's incredible in hand-to-hand combat, which would make him a perfect counter to a lot of ranged fighters. So like, the wizards spamming Fireball and Firebolt, Gojo can certainly close the gap with, if he uses his bonus action, 150 feet of movement speed, catching up to those wizards and pummeling the utter crap out of them. Meanwhile, able to throw out Primary Blue across the room and Reversal Red across the room. Because of this, Gojo is able to take care of crowds incredibly easily, and I think he would slot in very well in a high magic-based setting. Finally, we get to the final encounter, and the idea I had was basically the same as I suggested with Melania last week. Maybe you don't want Gojo in your campaign, but you really like the stat block that I've created, so you kind of just take him, remove the name Gojo, and use some of the abilities here, the stats, maybe, even some of the actions, but you get rid of some things. I mean, I can definitely see why most of you would get rid of things like Infinity and the Focused Reversed Curse Technique, as a once per day full heal and the basic, 75% chance of no attacks hitting Gojo. All of that stuff is incredibly insane, and I understand why you would not want to run those things against your players. So feel free to dismantle the character sheet however you would like and add things to it and take things away. I just create these character sheets according to what I think would best fit the characters. And that is it. I want to thank you all so much for getting to the end of this video, and of course, as always, I would appreciate it if you liked and subscribed, but if you've gotten this far, that must mean you like my content so much that hopefully you're willing to do so. It's just a couple of clicks on your part and nothing off of my hide. It's just really appreciated. And honestly, if you made it to the end of this video alone, that in itself is impressive. Honestly, I suggest using these videos as a sort of background noise, just distraction that you can do while doing something. I know that I'll have a long video playing in the background of someone just talking for a while, video commentary and stuff like that when I'm cooking or things like that, if I don't need to actively pay attention and super hyper focus on the recipe. But with that said, I thank you all so much, and I hope you all have a wonderful week.